Hi, everybody. This is a podcast, Everything About Hockey. Today's episode, I'm dealing with the NCAA Division I ice hockey teams that I think you guys should focus on this season. I know it's the season's already started. I got a little delayed on doing this, but this episode, I'm going to be talking about the teams I think are the ones that have the best chance of going deep into the NCAA Division I ice hockey tournament, and the ones that have a really good chance of winning their conference titles. First, I'm going to be focused on Hockey East teams. I'm going to start off with BC and BU, and then I'm going to work myself down to a couple other teams. I think they have a really good chance of taking on the big guns, which was BC and BU. Then I'm going to look at the Big Ten. I'm going to focus on Minnesota and Michigan first. And then I'm going to go and look at a few other teams that I think have a chance to actually knock off them two teams, but them two teams I think are the favorites. Then I'll go with the NCAA conference, and I'm going to look at the Denver and North Dakota are two teams I'm going to focus on in that conference. And basically all I'm going to really do here is just give you a description of the teams and the players I think you should watch. So let's get it started. So the first team I'm going to look at is Quinnipiac. This is the actual national champion from last year. They've returned a majority of their impact players from last year, so they still should be a force in the NCAA Division I hockey this year. The only really big impact player that they lost was Yanni Perret, their goaltender. This guy was a human wall last year for them, and his numbers were incredible. He had 34 wins. His save percentage is .930, and his goal against average is 1.49. Unbelievable. I mean, he tore up the league last year. It's going to be hard to replace him. But the Bobcats should be, again, the class of the ECAC, and no reason why they can't compete for another national championship. They have Colin Graff back. He's a 6-foot, 180-pound forward. He's a junior, and he scored 59 points last year. They also got back Sam Lipskin. He's a sophomore now, but his freshman year, he totaled up 43 points for him. He's 6'2" and 192 pounds. They also got Jacob Quillen. He's another junior. He's 6 foot and 102 pounds. He scored 38 points for the Bobcats last year. So they've got three highly productive forwards right there for the Bobcats. And they also have Charles Alexis Legault. He was drafted by Carolina Hurricanes in 2023. He's a 6'3", 114-pound sophomore defenseman. In 40 games last year, he scored 2 goals, 7 assists for 9 points. Then you also have Cooper Moore. He's a defenseman. He's a senior, 6'2", 108 pounds. He was drafted by Detroit 2019. So you can see the Bobcats have a lot of talent there. It just matters, can they put it together again this year? Now, the next thing I want to look at is the Boston University. They also got a lot of solid talent, too. Of course, with all this talent, I think their defensive core is still their strength. And, obviously, they're always going to be at the top of the East standings. The first person I'm going to look at is Ryan Green. He's a sophomore, 6'1", 185 pounds. He was drafted by the Hawks, Chicago Blackhawks, by the way, in the second round, 2022. His freshman year, he played 38 games. He scored 9 goals, 22 assists for 30 points. He's a good hands, quick, middle six forward, projected in the NHL. Another guy I like to watch from Boston University is Devin Kaplan. He's a sophomore. He's 6'3", 200 pounds. In 40 games, he scored 10 goals for 13 assists for 23 points. He was drafted by the Philadelphia Flyers in the third round in 2022. He's just a very big, mobile forward. They also got Tom Willander. He's a freshman this year. He's drafted by Vancouver in the first round, 2023 draft. He's 6'1", 191 pounds. Okay, the next guy I'm going to look at is Lane Hudson. He's a defenseman. He's a sophomore, 5'11", 176 pounds. He was drafted by Montreal in the second round in 2022. In 39 games, he scored 15 goals for 13 assists for 28 points. He was scored the most points for a defenseman at his age since Brian Leach at Boston University. He's got really quick, soft hands that can shoot accurately. But what really impresses me is when he's in the defensive zone, he's got a really active stick, and he's able to get that stick in the passing lanes on a regular basis. Now let's look at another Boston area team, which is Boston College. Every time I talk about Boston University or Boston College, I always think I should be talking in a Boston accent. But I can't do one, so I guess I won't be able to do that. Let's look at Boston College's stud recruiting they got the last couple years. They've recruited real heavily from the U.S. National Development Program. The first person I want to look at is Will Smith. He's a freshman. He's 6 foot, 181 pounds. He was drafted by the Sharks in 2021. He's a great playmaking forward with real swift, smooth hands. Then they also got Ryan Leonard. He's also going to be a freshman this year. He's a 6 foot, 192 pound. He was a 2023 pick by the Washington Capitals. He's a high-end two-way forward with good physical presence. And the last guy they got from the junior program is Cutter Gauthier. He was drafted by the Philadelphia Flyers in 2022. He was also a first overall pick. So they got 2023, 2 of them, and a 2022 first-round pick going to Boston College. Gauthier is actually a big physical power forward that loves to drive to the net, and he hits hard. And since I like watching the U.S. developmental program a lot, since I am actually in the U.S., I like to watch. I'm also going to watch Boston College a lot, just because those 3 guys are actually on the team. They also have a sophomore. He's a 6'4", 205-pound forward, Andre Gasso. Last year's team, he racked up 23 points. So Boston's got some really young, good talent there. But the only thing I got is I want to see how well their goaltending develops this year. If it comes out really good, they also should be competing for the Hockey East title too. Now let's look at Merrimack. Let's just see what their team has. Of course, you have to look at their 2 goaltenders. They've got 2 goaltenders that are definitely 1A potential, and they should be leading this team. The first person I'm going to look at is Alex Jeffries. He's a 2020 4th-round draft pick. He scored 41 points last year for the team. But it was really interesting. He had a chance to sign with the Islanders, but decided to opt out so he could go back and play his senior year for Merrimack. He's got a excellent shot, and he's solid vision. I can see him leading the team in leadership. Player I like to look at is Matt Capone. He was drafted by the Edmonton Oilers. He was a 2023 draft pick, 7th overall. Last year, he scored 14 goals, 15 assists for 29 points in 37 games. He's got a great work ethic. And the 2 goaltenders I was referring to earlier is Hugo Auglas. He's a junior. He was drafted by the New York Rangers in the 7th round in 2020. Stats for last year were his goal against average was 2.32, and his save percentage is .915. And the other goaltender that split time with him last year is Zachary Borgio. He's an undrafted senior. His stats last year were his save percentage was .919, and his goals against average was 2.08. So they had solid goals against average and save percentage, and I'm seeing that that's going to be the same thing again this year. They're going to split time and have a solid performance again this year. Now, these next 2 teams are, I consider, long shots for the Hockey East title, but I do think if they do get hot, they should be able to make some noise in the NCAA Division I hockey tournament. The first one I'm going to look at is the University of Maine. First person I'm going to look at is Victor Osman. He's a solid senior goaltender that was undrafted. His stats last year were he had 14 wins. His goals against average last year was 2.21, and his save percentage is 918. He's going to have to actually do a really good job because the defense is a little unstable, so he's going to have to save the game a lot for him. Then they also got Bradley Dedeaux. He's a freshman. He was drafted by the Hurricanes in 2021, first overall pick. He's 5'10", 170 pounds. He'll be a middle six forward for the Canes probably. He's a quick, shifty, hard shot forward. So they're going to have to really rely on this basically a team game, the Black Bears. But I happen to like this team. I think this team could be a really good underdog. Now let's look at the University of Connecticut. Of course, the first person you want to obviously look at is Nashville's first-round pick in last year's draft, Matthew Wood. He's a 6'3", 190-pound power forward. He's got great skill. He's good hands. Last year, he scored in 35 games. He scored 11 goals for 23 assists for 34 points. And I think that's just the tip of the iceberg with this team. I think this guy can really lead a team and really dominate the Hockey East if he gets going. They also have Samu Solomon. He was drafted by the New Jersey Devils in the third round of the 2021 draft. He's got high IQ, and he's got soft hands. I think these two guys really should help University of Connecticut really be a true underdog. I mean, I could see if this team really develops like I think it should, they also should be able to compete for a really deep run in the NCAA Division I hockey tournament. Now let's look at the Big Ten's teams. First, we're going to start with the University of Minnesota, team that lost in the championship game last year. I don't mean to be throwing salt on old wounds here for the Golden Gophers fans. This is a team that brought back its core of one of the most productive offensive teams in NCAA last year, having a great chance to return to the Frozen Four again this year. Let's look at a few of the players that's going to make that happen. First one I'm going to look at is Justin Close. He's a grad student, 5'10", 175-pound goaltender who was fourth in the nation in save percentage last year with .927, and he's back for his graduate year. He won 26 games, and his goals against average was 2.03. He was one of the top NCAA ice hockey goaltenders last year, and I don't see any reason why he couldn't be again this year. Now, the next person I'm going to bring up is Jimmy Snuggerud. He's a sophomore. He's 6'1", 185 pounds. He was drafted by St. Louis Blues in 2022. He had 50 points last year. He had 21 goals. Now, the only problem with this is I think he's still one heck of a forward, but his two line mates left to go to the NHL, and that was Nines and Cooley. So he's lost his line mates. So it's going to be interesting to see how he fits in without those two guys. But I still think he's a legitimate top NCAA forward. Now, this next person, Bryce Borinsky, I think he's going to be a real help to Snuggerud from the departures of the two guys I just mentioned. He's a 6 foot, 102 pounds forward, drafted by the Philadelphia Flyers in 2019. He did have 19 goals last year, but I think he's can produce a whole lot more than that. The other guy I want to mention is Oliver Moore. He's a freshman this year. He's 5'11", 190 pounds. He was a 2023 Chicago Blackhawks late first rounder. He comes from the U.S. national team. He scored 74 points last year for the U.S. national team. He should be an immediate impact player. He has high skills, and he's a playmaking forward. I can see him fitting right in that top line for Minnesota. But this team is extremely deep, so I'm not going to get too detailed with all their players. This team will be competing for the Big Ten title again and a chance to be in the NCAA Ice Hockey Frozen Four. Now let's look at University of Michigan. This is one of the highest scoring teams last year, but they had some defensive problems last year too. And it's going to be really interesting to see what happens this year. If they can tighten up that defense, and see if they can actually compete for the Big Ten title too. And they should also be competing for a spot in the NCAA Division Ice Hockey Tournament. They also lost some key impact offensive forwards, but I think they've got enough returning to still be a legitimate high-scoring team. First player I'm going to look at is Rugger McGorty. He's a sophomore. He's 6'1", 200 pounds. He was drafted by Winnipeg in 2022. He scored 39 points last year. He's got great hands, and he's got a solid shot. I think he's going to be an impact player for the Wolverines. I also think Gavin Brindley is also going to be a tie-in player for him this year too. He's a sophomore. He's 5'9", 170 pounds. He was drafted by the Columbus Blue Jackets in 2023, second round. He scored 38 points last year. He had 12 goals, 24 assists for 38 points. He's an NHL high-end speedy forward. He never gives up on a puck. The other forward I think is going to help out with the losses is Dylan Duke. He's a junior. He's 5'10", 180 pounds. He's drafted by Tampa Bay Lightning in the fourth round of 2021. He had 32 points last year. He's a great checking winger. It's all going to rely, though, on Jacob Brzeski and Noah West. Now, let's talk a little bit about both of them. First, let's look at Jacob Brzeski. He's a graduate transfer. His goals against average was 2.64, and his save percentage was .98. He's played 100 games at the NCAA college level. He's got a little bit of experience in the NCAA. So let's look at the other goaltender they're going to rely on, and Noah West, he's a senior, 6'1", 185 pounds. He's seen limited action in the last 4 years, but he has had a career 2.68 goal against average and a save percentage of .916. So he's got a little bit of experience there, but so we're going to see which one takes control of the crease and really takes over the back end of this Wolverine team, because this team needs to have a good goaltender with the defense the way it is. Those are two of the teams I think will be fighting for that Big Ten title. But the other team here, Michigan State, is another team that I think has got a really good chance, again, a Big Ten title. They're an all-around solid team. So let's look at some of the players they have. Jeremy Davison is the first person I'm going to look at. He's a junior. He scored 10 goals, 11 assists for 21 points. He's going to be kind of the leader of this whole thing. But the guy I'm really been focusing on, he's a transfer from Minnesota Duluth, Howard Isaac. He's a junior, 5'11", 190-pound forward. He was a 2022 Tampa Bay Lightning draft pick. In Minnesota Duluth, in 35 games, he scored 6 goals, 11 assists for 17 points. He's a pretty creative playmaking forward. The player I'm going to look the most at this season is their goaltender. Their new goaltender from the Detroit Red Wings is Trey Augustine. He's going to be a freshman this year because he plays for last year he played for the U.S. national team, under-18 team. So he's a true freshman that I think has a legitimate shot at taking the crease for the Michigan State Wolverines. They also have a really interesting defenseman. His name is Artyom Leshinov. He's going to be a freshman this year. He's 6'2", 200 pounds. Last year he played in the USHL, where he scored 42 points. He's a big, mobile defenseman, and he could be a top 10 pick in the 2024 draft. So Michigan State's got some talent to compete with Minnesota and Michigan. Now I'm going to look at a team that most experts think is going to be a long shot. They should be at the bottom of the Big Ten Conference. But I think they've got quite interesting talent, and I think they have a chance, if everything goes right, to actually be a competitive team in the Big Ten. And I'm talking about Ohio State. Now, a guy I think is really going to be making a difference for Ohio State is Stephen Halliday. He's a sophomore. He's 6'4", 210 pounds forward. He was a Ottawa Senators fourth-round pick, 2022. He's a big, strong guy. Last year in 40 games, he scored 9 goals, 32 assists for 40 points. He was a point-per-game guy last year, a big playmaking forward. And I think he could really impact this Big Ten team. If he can get a little bit more help, Ohio State could really be impressive. I think Riley Hughes, it could be the real answer here. He's a forward, a grad student, 6'2", 200 pounds. He was drafted by the New York Rangers in 2018, a late 7th-round pick. And he transferred from Northeastern, where he got 2 goals, 4 assists, and 6 points in 32 games. Not really great numbers, but he's got potential. Another one is Brent Johnson. He's another transfer. He's a junior, 6 foot, 185 pounds. He was drafted by Washington in 3rd round in 2021. For North Dakota, in 13 games, he scored 1 goal, 5 assists for 6 points. He's kind of struggled throughout his college career, but hopefully he can turn around here and help the Buckeyes. Then, of course, you can't forget Wisconsin. They have Charlie Stramel. He's a sophomore. He's 6'2", 222 pounds forward. He played 33 games last year for him, but he only had 12 points, which I was kind of disappointed in a little bit. But the scouts were still so impressed with him. He was a first-rounder last year in the June draft. He was drafted 19th overall by the Minnesota Wild. So now let's get out of the Big Ten, and now let's look at Denver, which has another really solid team. They always have all-around depth, and they're always really competitive. First person I'm going to look at is Meza Rizzo. He's a junior, 5'11", and 185 pounds. This guy's a little bug that flies all around the ice. The puck follows him around. He's everywhere. It's unbelievable how much he gets involved in the plays and how active he is. He even had more scoring. They have Adam Thompson. He was drafted by the Chicago Blackhawks in 2022. He's another 5'11", 175-pound guy. But he returns for his sophomore year after his freshman year. He scored 32 points his freshman year. Another guy I'm interested in is Tristan Brose. He transferred from Minnesota this year. He's a 6-foot, 190-pound forward that was drafted by Pittsburgh Penguins in 2021. He's got good hands, and he's supposed to be a really good playmaking center iceman. So Denver has an awful lot of offensive skill and solid defense. But let's look at the team I think they're going to be going up against, and that's North Dakota. Then, of course, their leading scorer from last year is going to return again this year, Jackson Blake. He's a sophomore, 5'11", 173 pounds. In 2021, Carolina Hurricanes drafted him in the 4th round. And last year he scored in 39 games. He got 16 goals, 26 assists for 42 points. And he was also the NCAA Rookie of the Year last year. And then to shore up their defense, they got Garrett Pike. He's a senior, 6'1", 190 pound. He came from University of Alaska, where he had 34 games. He scored 4 goals, 15 assists for 19 points. They also got another guy from the University of Michigan to shore up their defense. He's a grad student. His name's Keaton Pearson. And, of course, to shore up the goal, they got a guy from Miami of Ohio. His name is Ludwig Pearson. Of course, I would like to see Reese Gaver step up and play more of a critical role in this team. So that was my preview of the NCAA ice hockey teams I think you should look at, and the players I think you should focus on too. Well, thanks for listening. This is Everything About Hockey podcast. Goodbye.